Hello guys, I am the Bear and today I present to you what if Jon Snow was badass king in the north. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Enjoy. I want you to know that I don't own the story or Game of Thrones. If I did, maybe it would have ended with another king on the throne.
Notes. Chapter text. Val. I wonder if this is what the kings of winter looked like when they weren't simply tales among the free folk. That was what Val thought as she marched ever closer to Torrhen Square with Jon Snow, at the front of his army of free folk and umbers in the snowy wolfswood, unflinching in the wind. Everything about him screamed it in Val's head. His actions at Deepwood Motte, gutting the corpses of the squids and offering it to the heart tree. How he got his army, fighting the toughest warriors they had, bare-handed, proving his strength. His northern attire, a mix of tartan, leather and chain mail, with a knife as black as night attached to his greaves, and Longclaw at his side, next to the guard on top of the tartan, all in dark colors or stark gray. A gift from the Umbers and the mountain clans. And his face, always etched with a sense of feral. It was there when his face was like ice, when he was angry and when he smiled. Always there, always wolfish. It all spoke of the tales of the kings of winter. Val had wondered if it had always been in him before he died. She had seen the way he acted before his death, like he was holding back. Holding back his power as a warg. Acting less because of the name Snow. Being completely reserved, almost isolated by the time he became King Crow. The wolfishness that had come after his death seemed to have taken that away. He looked relaxed in it, almost reveling in it. He looked truly alive in it all. Just like his wolf at the head of its pack. That had only kept growing as they marched through the wolfswood. Val was taken from her thoughts by Tormund's booming laugh. "What do you find so funny, Tormund?" Val asked, turning to the big man who joined her at the front. Tormund looked at her with an amused grin. "You looking at King Crow, Val? You look like a wolf in heat." "Har." Val gave Tormund a hard stare. "Go fuck another bear, Tormund." Tormund laughed harder. "Har, har. I might if I find one at Torrhen Square. Or I might ask one if there are any giant women in that clan up at the wall that fancy a giant's member on a man." Val rolled her eyes at the man. She wondered how he had sons and daughters. "What do you think of Snow now anyway, Tormund? You've not said much on it." Tormund raised his busy eyebrows, then laughed again. "You are wanting to fuck him? Har. Answer the question, Tormund, or I'll gild you before you get your chances with the bears and giant women." Tormund laughed for a moment before calming down. "The lad's different, no denying that. I heard from the Umber lot what you all did at Deepwood Motte." "You've been talking with the Umbers?" Val asked, not able to hide the surprise. Tormund smiled. "A few fights first with them, then a few drinks, but I have. Not a bad lot for kneelers that we've fought with for centuries." Val nodded at him. She'd noticed that. The free folk and the Umbers were mingling. There'd been more than a few fights, but nobody had been killed. A lot of testing each other's mettle. She wondered if it was because of how Jon acted with everyone. Or if it was because we are the first men and women. But to Jon, the lad's got more than enough of his wolf in him now. A good thing for what's coming. We have a better shot of living through winter and long after it with him as he is now than before. And the lad was impressing me before then, for all his kneeler shit that he had." Val smiled at him. Damn good thing that he's lost that. Snow's not going to kneel to anyone anymore." Tormund laughed again. "Assuming you don't steal him, of course." Val growled at Tormund, his grin widening. "How has someone not killed you yet, Tormund? See, Val, I'm right. You're like a wolf in heat. Har." Tormund's laughter was interrupted by his son, Dryn, running towards them and shouting. "Da." Tormund turned to the lad. "What is it, son? You bit a kneeler?" His son laughed like Tormund. "Nada, I'm saving that for the Boltons. Jon says we're near Torrhen Square. He wants us to get ready. One of the scouts says the army he sent by sea is camped outside the walls waiting for us. Tormund grinned at his son. Sounds good, son. Been dying to show these Umbers and the rest of the Kneelers what a proper son of the first men can do. Val smiled while shaking her head. I doubt it'll come to a fight, Tormund. You were at the camp with Jon. There are barely any of them in that one. Tormund glared at her with his smirk. But it doesn't mean they won't shit themselves to death when they see me coming. Val snorted. Well, you are an ugly fuck, Tormund. Dryn laughed. Tormund glared at the two. I don't need to look as pretty as you, Val. All I need is for you lasses to take a look at me, member. All it took for me to get your mother dripping, Dryn. Val laughed as the boy gave a disgusted look at his father. Maybe his son will kill him for that thought. Asterisk. Val was surprised that the squids hadn't surrendered yet. The forces Jon had sent by sea had wiped out any aid that would come from the stony shore and had taken the ships that had been docked in the lake. They had nowhere to go and had been surrounded for a week now. There's only 50 of them in the castle, Tormund exclaimed to the group of commanders as they approached the front of the siege. Then why haven't they surrendered yet then if there's so few of them? Or why haven't you just taken it? Val asked. Alcier laughed. You don't know much about castles, Val. There aren't many of them and it would be easy enough to take it. But we'd lose more men storming those 30-foot walls to get the squids. Besides, the bigger issue is the hostages, Lawrence said angrily. Hugo Wool grunted in response. The lads got the right of it. Us wolves and flints could have climbed in at the dead of night and slaughtered the lot of them, but they'd kill the tall hearts. Nori nodded. It's why we're stuck. If we move, they'll kill the Lady Hedera and Lords Brandon and Baron. But we don't want the fucks to leave as free men. We have the Greyjoy bitch though. We could trade her, Val pointed out. Then we'd have nobody to trade for Glover's children, Alciane reminded her. Jon, who had been staring at the walls as they all talked, finally intervened. Have you told them we have the squid? Jon asked the group, that deep growl ever present. Will shook his head. No, we haven't shown her at all when Dagmar first showed his face to talk when we surrounded the castle. Jon nodded. Good. I don't want him to know. We don't need her for this lot. Did you get any squids at the stony shore alive? Little nodded, a couple. Jon smiled wolfishly at him, stroking his wolf's head. Go get them. He turned to Tormund. Go bring one and some of the giants. Asterisk. Dagmar Cleftjaw was an ugly one. Val could see that as she stood to Jon's right. Snow-white hair, a scar that ran across his face and a jaw that looked like it had been broken one too many times. He was the last leader of the Ironborn in the north, with 2 men to his side. Val could see the other squids on top of the walls. The squid gave an uncomfortable look at Ghost, then gave Jon a dirty look. I thought all you wolves were dead. I had drunk me fill knowing that. But here you are, a Stark in the flesh, just like Ned Stark at Pike. Val watched Jon eye him up like his wolf did prey, then snarled, I have terms for your surrender, squid. Dagmar looked unnerved at the snarl. What are your terms then, wolf? Do they involve what I demanded? Free passage for me and my men? Surrender the castle and you'll be sent to the wall, Jon said with a low growl. Dagmar looked annoyed. Those aren't terms, boy. Offering us a prison where I can't wet my cock. And they're foolish ones if you want to get the tall hearts back alive. They're your only terms, squid, Jon said, snarl growing louder. Dagmar laughed. Not a smart one then. You might change your mind after I fuck that tall heart girl in front of your army. She's made a good salt wife, so eager to please to keep her cousins safe. The thought of that made Val angry, like the other Northmen present. She'd been told what a salt wife was. A vile thing. It was Jon though that was making the squids uncomfortable. Val wasn't sure who was growling more, Jon or his wolf. But she could tell it was making the squids behind Dagmar nervous. The squid then looked at her. Might make you jealous. Such a pretty woman left with this pathetic lot. Val almost reached for her knife to gild the bastard until Jon put his hand on her shoulder. She could feel the heat off him, the anger. He kept his hand there for a moment until a thundering started. Then he gave them all that feral grin she'd seen him wear so often. Val knew exactly why he was smiling, and the squids before her and on top of the walls were getting paler and paler. She turned to see Tormund and Morgan Little, holding a squid each, with the giants behind them. Tormund had brought 20 of the 200 that were with the army, one at the front of them. They were all holding large wooden shields and wooden clubs with spikes. That had been Jon's idea, to give shields and improve their weapons to the giants, a race that mainly used their hands and bows. She knew he intended to make iron and steel weapons and armor. The Karstark and Umber keeps were already building them. Val turned back to the Ironborn as the thundering of 15-foot giants got closer and closer. They were as white as ghost. When the group of giants arrived, with Tormund and Morgan Little, the squids looked truly terrified. Jon's smile grew more and more. The Northmen all seemed to be enjoying the show. Dagmar broke the Ironborn's terrified silence. My men will still be able to kill the Tallhearts before they break through. Dagmar didn't sound confident at all. Jon smiled wolfishly at him. Little, put your squid in front of one. Little brought the squid in front of the giant. He looked scared. The giant gave his club to one of the giants. Then picked the squid up. He screamed. Tormund, tell one to eat him in 10 minutes. Tormund laughed, har. I don't think he'll get much out of the squid. Val had to hold back her laugh. She knew that giants were vegetarian. She knew the Northmen knew, they'd been told when they worried at the thought of fighting alongside them. But the squids wouldn't. Jon looked up to the squids on the walls. Open the gates and take the black, or wait and watch what the giants will do to you. Val watched the squids stare in shock as they looked at one eyeing up the squid in his hand, who continued to scream. They started to move quickly. The 2 Ironborn behind Dagmar kneeled. Then the gates opened up. Val watched as the Ironborn slowly left, each kneeling in front of the Northmen. Dagmar looked astounded. He couldn't do anything. He was the last to kneel. One put the squid back down, giving a loud laugh. Jon looked the lot of them for a moment. Are there any of you hiding in the castle? Jon asked with that low growl. One of them was brave enough to speak, albeit in a stutter. No. We've all left the keep. Ghost moved towards the squid, growling and giving a sniff at the man, then returned to Jon. I reckon that wolf would have tore his throat out if he were lying. And the Tallhearts? Jon asked, just as menacing as before. The dungeons. The squid slowly said. Jon nodded. Well, Norrie, go bring the men into the keep. Alciane, go get the Tallhearts. And Tormund, keep the squids with the giants. Tormund laughed as him and the giants looked at the squids. Val watched Jon look at the squids. You all surrendered. You'll be placed in cells then sent to take the black. Val watched him turn to Dagmar. Your leader, though, will be gelded and executed. He only knelt after you surrendered. Dagmar looked angry. He went to get up, but Val unsheathed her dagger and put it at his throat. She unsheathed the other and put it next to his manhood. You better watch yourself, squid. I'll make a much messier job than Jon will when he gelds and kills you. We'll be much slower. Val heard the Northmen and Tormund laugh, Alciane's the loudest. Val held her daggers until a contingent of guards grabbed the man along with the squids. When she sheathed her daggers, she noticed that Jon was looking at her with that wolfish grin, before turning to enter the castle gates. Once Jon entered the keep, she heard Tormund's boom. Har! Seems that Jon's also a wolf in heat. Val ignored him. Even if he was right. Jon's smile had something she hadn't seen on him without it being held back. Lust. Val smirked. She wondered which of them would manage to steal the other first. I stole Jarl first. I can steal the White Wolf of Winter. Notes.